So hello everybody. I'm Ana Lopez from CryptoConexión. We are delighted to receive Angela. Let me read your surname, Stephens.
Yes.
Yeah, that is going to lead this workshop about leadership. So first of all, Angela, introduce yourself because I'm sure that you are going to do better than me. So yeah.
Hello, everyone. I am Angela Steffens, aka Wonder Woman Code, in all of the places online. And I'm an engineer with more than 20 years experience in software engineering, management, developer relations. You can find me a lot of times hanging out over at Unlock DAO. Where I help work on Unlock Protocol. I used to be on their core team as their developer relations engineer. And I have fallen in love with Web3 and really love this space and excited to be here today, especially because DEI is actually one of my, you know, things is near and dear to my heart, and one of the things that I take up on a regular basis because I believe that there needs to be more spaces for women and non-binary people in this space, not just Web3 but tech in general. So I'm happy to be here today and talk to you guys a little bit about leadership.
Thank you very much, Angela. Yeah, it's really important. Leadership is one of our main, clues or in our hackathon. So yeah, I give you the word and you can share your screen and do whatever you need. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks. Hold on 1 second while I share my screen, you guys.
Of
And
course.
I'm gonna get my presentation up. Let's see. Mhm. Bear with me, technical difficulties.
You can't find share your screen?
No, it's giving me an error on permissions.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
An error? Okay. I have the option selected that you can share your screen. So
I think it is on my computer actually. So okay. Hopefully that fixed it. It made me quit and reopen. So hopefully that did it. Oh, it's still giving me an error, of course. This is always what happens
if
when you
you
get.
want, you can share the presentation with me and I can, share my screen. And if you want.
Yeah, maybe that'll do it if this doesn't. Bear with me when I go grab your email address and go get that. Sorry, guys.
Don't worry.
Always the day you have something like this. Nothing wants to work. Okay. There you go, Anna.
Okay, give me a second.
Apologies, everybody. We're having some technical issues. In a little bit, we'll start formally. But Angela, maybe as she does get that started, do you want to tell us
Yeah.
about yourself? I know you shared a little bit right now, but we'd love to learn more how you got started, maybe in Web3, and then we can
Yeah.
fall in love.
So I've been Web3 since 2016. I uh, I really dove in actually after Ethereum launched. That was like the thing that made blockchain really makes sense to me as a software engineer. When it was just Bitcoin, I had a hard time wrapping my head around what are we going to do with this, thing. But when Ethereum came out and it became programmable, it was something that I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. I get it. And then I really just dove in with gusto, and started reading about all the different kinds of blockchains that were out there at the time, beyond Ethereum, XLM and um, Ada and all of the others. And I really fell in love. I went to work for Unlock Protocol because Julian Genesau, who started Unlock Protocol, was actually somebody that I met years ago before blockchains existed, at a meetup in San Francisco. Believe it or not, he was talking about federated identity over XMPP, and I introduced myself because I was working on distributed systems at the time, using XMPP servers. And we both had a love of the open web. And so when I knew, after I took a break with my kids and I knew I wanted to be in the Web3 space, and I saw that he had a job open for developer relations, I was like, let's go. Especially because I saw his vision with Unlock Protocol. It made a lot of sense to me then. Um, and I had a lot of respect for Julian because he, had a successful startup himself. And coming from a leadership position and having had a successful startup and exit myself, I really wanted to like work with people that had a lot of the same ethos that I respected a lot, that had done startup before. And it was a really great opportunity for me to get out and explain Web3 to the rest of the world and travel around and talk at conferences about Web3 and about NFTs and the different types of uses of blockchain. And I really, really have enjoyed it in all of my time here with the wider community, which I found, and I think that all of you might appreciate this, I found it actually much more inclusive than a lot of other communities in tech. Um, I think that that's so important, and I'm really happy to see the newer spaces in artificial intelligence, in blockchain, really embrace inclusivity in a way that I haven't seen in the past. And I'm really excited to, see that move forward for everyone. And I think what we're talking about today is actually some really important parts of fostering inclusivity, and that is like learning and teaching others to step out in front and lead, and also to do it in a different way, to realize that Web3 has its own ethos. And some of that ethos is a little bit different than in some other tech spaces, and some other workspaces. And some of that is what we're going to talk about today. Part of where Web3 came from is empowering people to, um, you know, take power back into their own hands. And I think we talk a lot about, decentralization allows for that. And permissionless systems also allow for that. So when it comes to leadership, we're sort of looking at it through those lenses. And I just realized I can't shift my slides. So Anna, next slide. So this is me, Angela Stephens, and you might recognize me from the web by my avatar of a fan of CryptoConexión. So you'll see me there then. Okay, next slide. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today about leadership, some of the core tenets, pitfalls and roadblocks, what that looks like through a Web3 lens specifically, and female non-binary and genderqueer lens. Next slide. Okay, so the definition of leadership means a lot of different things to different people. And there's a million books on leadership. You're going to find all kinds of opinions about leaders. But what I'm talking about today, and for the sake of this workshop, we're going to talk about a definition of leadership that is a little bit different. And that's one that centers on decolonization. And sometimes that feels a little bit uncomfortable to people. They're like, I want to be a business person. Why are we talking about decolonization? Listen, if women are going to get out front, we need to dismantle power structures that stop us from being out front. And thinking about things from a colonization perspective, like if those power systems were created by colonization, by the historical institutions of colonization, then we need to dismantle those first and look at decolonizing and redefine everything through that lens before we can really step into our power. So that's why I think it's so important to not just take a look at what men are doing and mimic that, but change the way that we approach it entirely and show and lead in a different way. And that's what we're talking about today. So this is what I mean when I'm saying we're talking about leadership and we're centering it on decolonization. We're prioritizing self-reflection. We're empowering our community and our team members. We're centering community and team voices. We're respecting cultural differences. We're practicing inclusivity. We're focusing on interdependence. We're centering change over comfort. And we're distributing power more equally. So prioritizing self-reflection. Oh my gosh. This is probably the most difficult thing that you're going to bump up against as you step into leadership. And it's also one of the most fulfilling things that you will go through as a process and growth in leadership. At least that's what I found personally. I really have so many stories about how in the very beginning, when I first stepped into leadership roles in tech, especially, I think that I was self-reflecting in the wrong way. I was beating myself up. I was constantly worried about making the same mistakes over again. And I was letting that realization of some of the places where I could improve myself bring me down. But I think that there's really a different way to go about it. Next slide. So I realized at one point that what I needed to do first was to be authentic. And when I did that and I stopped trying to mimic what I saw, when I stopped reading the books written by men about leadership, when I stopped looking to flawed versions of male patriarchy led leadership, I realized that it felt very empowering, and it allowed me to just be more at ease. And once I did that, once I was so much more at ease with myself, everybody around me became so much more at ease with me in that position. So my team stopped second guessing me. My coworkers started respecting me more. My even my kids at home, when I started really just letting myself be me, I really stepped into my power. And I think that that's really important. Know yourself first. Be introspective. What do you love about yourself? Embrace that. Tell people about that. Tell your team about that. Talk to people about your strengths and weaknesses. It's okay to have them, by the way, the weaknesses. But also seek perspective. But when you do so, introspect some more without that guilt or shame or any of that other stuff that usually comes with it. I have noticed since I've had a significant shift in the way that I thought about all of this, I realized that I was able to be open to change in a different way when I stopped feeling shame over the things that I wasn't perfect on. And I said, okay, well, I don't have to learn to be perfect about that. I just need to know myself well enough. And the changes I make don't necessarily mean I have to change into something else that I'm not. I can continue to be me and respect where I'm at in my process, or say that other thing is not for me, but realize that and bring other team members with those strengths that I lack close to me. So being open to change isn't just about saying I have to change into something else or something different, but it's about saying, okay, I realize that there's something I need that I don't have, and bringing those things in closer to you. Finding the resources, whether they be people or software or tools or whatever, to get those needs met. You don't have to be all those things. You can still be a leader without knowing and being everything. And just remember that leading is about guidance. It's about keeping people focused. It's about bringing people together and keeping them together, resolving conflict. But it's not about you knowing and doing everything. This is one of like probably the biggest mistakes I see happen in females who lead, is they think they need to know and be everything to everyone, and they burn themselves out quite often doing that. Okay, next slide. Empowering community and teams. So this is a little bit about what I was talking about before. And you can just pop over to the next slide real quick. And that is, ensuring that you surround yourself with people who fit some of those needs that you don't have, especially when we're talking about this hackathon right now, of course, right? You want to grab a team that has diverse people on it that can do many different things. A whole bunch of people that do the same thing is not what you need, right? But how you frame people has an effect on how they see themselves and how the team sees them. So if you don't frame people in, if you don't keep them in whatever shape they initially come in, it gives them an opportunity to grow. And if you don't, if you keep them in that bubble, if you continue a narrative inside the team that says this person is this and only this, you will stop people from growing. And when people don't feel like they have opportunities and a place to go from where they're at, if they feel stagnant, that is when they'll leave, right? So if you want to keep people around you, you need to empower them. And empowering them is removing those frames that you put them in initially. And that's tough sometimes, right? Because especially when we're talking about leadership in teams, sometimes we're talking about roles, and those roles have definitions, and those definitions of specific roles, have certain line items of things that a person's supposed to do. And is this on your list or that person's list, sort of thing. But realize that if you're seeing a person continually grabbing for responsibility that is outside of their typical role, then that's an opportunity for you to empower them to make a move or to change their role. Instead of coming to them and saying, oh, this is not your job, don't worry about it. If someone naturally floats in one direction or another, then the opportunity is there for you to say, okay, well, let's reevaluate that. Maybe it's time for you to do something different, and let people grow into that. Now, here's the pitfall that I want you to be aware of in all of this. There's a big difference between empowerment and enablement. And I want you to be really careful, because as women, especially, and the roles that society has typically placed for us in these spaces, the biggest problem that I have seen is that if you instead of empowering people by giving them the knowledge and tools that they need to do the jobs themselves, you enable them by taking things off their plate, you're going to be, again, completely overwhelmed and end up with too much on your plate too. And I've seen this happen over and over again with me, with my friends who are females in leadership positions. Definitely remember that your job is to empower people to do things on their own and not to enable them to shirk their responsibility. Empowerment is about giving them tools and knowledge. So just remember that, and don't end up being the person that picks up everything and doesn't have the support that they need to. Remember, your team is there. You're there to support them, and they're there to support you too. Next one. So, centering community and team voices. I think that this is one thing that was a little easier for me. And I've heard that this has, been the case from a lot of my other female friends that are in leadership positions. And the reason is, when you're very used to being the only female in the room or non-binary person in the room, it feels very lonely. And that pressure of being the only one usually sort of puts you in a position of not speaking up sometimes as much. So when we've stepped into those leadership positions, I found, at least the female leaders I've had, and myself included, and some of my friends, you know, we're typically out there centering our team voices instead, knowing full well that there are people on the team who we need to encourage to speak up, who we need to give the opportunity to talk, and realizing that just because they don't do it on their own doesn't mean they don't have anything important to say. Next slide. So really what we're talking about is bottom up versus top down. You want to center the voices on your team or in your community because that is where you're going to find the most success. You can't do everything on your own. And ideas, perspective, the ability to, you know, get that feedback, and especially farming for ideas, you know, really comes from the team, and that should always be your priority. It's not that you don't have anything amazing to say as a leader. That's, you know, definitely not the case. But it's about remembering that you're not the only one in the room. And just because somebody gave you the mic doesn't necessarily mean that the other people without the mic don't have something interesting to say. So invite people up always and constantly, and give them opportunities. Ask lots of questions. That has to be like my biggest advice in this area, is asking questions is probably the most important thing. Okay. Respecting cultural differences is probably an entire workshop on its own, or 10. It's difficult, but I would encourage all of you to really, especially in the Web3 space, where we're all coming from completely different parts of the world, to really think about what it means for the people that you're working with. I have had so many amazing opportunities to change my perspective on life, on the world, on my own privilege. I'm a white woman that lives in the United States, in one of the more liberal places where there is a massive amount of abundance. I am immensely privileged. I think that having some perspective about that by having conversations and learning to respect and get to know, like truly get to know some of the people that I've had an opportunity to lead and work with, is really changed everything for me. And I think it's really important for all of us. It's also really important not to make assumptions. I mean, that's the other thing that I've really learned a lot, is that some people might not be necessarily as privileged as you think that they are, or you might have a complete misunderstanding of exactly where they come from. So, you know, going back to what I said before about asking questions, I think that's really the most important thing. I've had an opportunity at this point to work with people in every continent. I mean, except for, you know, I haven't worked with anybody in any of the poles, you know, like nobody in Antarctica, but South America, India, China, you know, all over Europe, Australia, New Zealand. I have had an opportunity to work with people all over the globe. And that has really given me a completely different perspective on the challenges, especially. And I think that that is something that is really important too, is the challenges are different depending on the cultural lens that people are coming from. And especially when you're talking about leading as a woman or a non-binary person in these spaces, because it is important to understand cultural context. Are you speaking to a group of mostly Muslim people, or are you speaking to a group of techies from San Francisco? Like, it is going to be a completely different experience depending on the group that you're with, and understanding the cultural differences is really important. And I think that it's probably definitely one of the most life-changing things for me, specifically in the Web3 space, is the global nature of it has given me the opportunity to practice that respect of cultural differences in a way that, while I was aware of it, and had always had an interest in, had never had the opportunity to practice in the most meaningful way that I have since I stepped into the Web3 space. And I think that that's been really fun, actually. Okay, next one. Practicing inclusivity. I have to say that practicing inclusivity is harder sometimes than people think. We don't think about it nearly as much because we are the people that are bringing some inclusivity to the table, right? A lot of times. But really looking around the room and ensuring that you don't create a monoculture has a significance, especially in Web3, that I think that a lot of people don't appreciate necessarily. And here's why. Your audience is global. If the group of people that are working on your team, or that are part of your community, are not also representative of that global community, then you will fail to have the same sort of messaging and systems and communication that really speaks to them. So you might actually build something that totally misses your target audience. So it's remembering that your audience is global. When we're talking about software, especially, you have an opportunity to reach out to all of those people, but having that perspective by being inclusive is going to give you what you need in order to ensure that you really meet everybody where they're at. And let me give you a really perfect example of this. I don't think I have to tell you all the stories about how, software and healthcare and everything else is sort of like not geared towards women. But let me give you a different example, because it might hit a little bit differently. When I was working in the Unlock community, I started working with quite a few people that lived in Africa, specifically Nigeria. And the infrastructure there is not nearly as good. So things like power outages and things like that are actually fairly common. Where here and in a lot of other, more developed nations, we don't have necessarily that problem. So when thinking about things and systems in the community at Unlock, I had to really think and rethink what it meant to expect people to be able to access things from a computer and maybe not a cell phone. because that's their backup. What it meant for people to, have to be out for the day. And just like we're making sure we're recording this for other people to look at later, like having, resources available and not being so stringent on, exacting times and things like that for people who don't necessarily have the support in infrastructure, physical infrastructure, to ensure that they can show up every time. It's not that they don't want to. And I think that this is really an important thing to remember when we're talking about some of this stuff. It's not for a lack of desire, but I'll tell you the effort that I made to overcome some of those issues paid dividends like immensely. Some of the members of the community that really came in and embraced the community because of that, because of the effort that I put in to reach out to them and to practice over and over again, trying to include them despite the challenges, meant that they were so grateful and became some of the greatest advocates for me personally, for the Unlock community. So, those sorts of things actually taught me that, inclusivity beyond even my own, of course I want to see people that look like me across the table. That always helps. It makes me feel better. But at the same time, it doesn't always give me everything that I need. And bringing everybody together from all over the place, like, gives us something that we need sometimes that we didn't even know. And that's, I think, really important, is figuring out what you don't know by practicing inclusivity, and having those opportunities to hear the different perspectives that come from all over the world.
Em surt a l'altre mail retornat. No sé per què, saps? M'acaba d'enviar ara, però bueno, ho he rebut al final.
Focus on interdependence. So this is like really, really fun when you learn to implement. Difficult because I think that a lot of cultures come from a place of fierce independence, and I know effectively here in the United States especially, independence is something that is really like sort of ingrained in you at a very early age. Figure it out for yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and everything else. But don't let the voices in tech that come from the United States and or Europe and that cultural lens force in this independent attitude onto you that doesn't feel natural. Because interdependence is so much stronger when you learn to practice it the right way. And that's a way that shows that you respect everybody where they come from, shows that you give them an opportunity to practice their superpowers, whatever those might be. It recognizes those superpowers and gives them an opportunity to practice them. And it says to your team members, you're allowed to not know the answer, to fail, and to rely on others. And that's okay. We have this idea that we're not allowed to do that. But interestingly enough, it was, it was a man who taught me this lesson a long time ago. One of the software engineers that I worked with, who was actually quite brilliant, he never even graduated from high school. He ended up on an international council for at the IEEE for an international protocol. Was very, very smart. You know, he said to me one day, "What's taking you so long on, you know, some part of mine that you know, he needed for the next thing." And interestingly enough, I was actually the team lead at this point. But I had gotten stuck on this not asking for help thing, and not focusing on the fact that we were, you know, all there together trying to do the same, you know, having the same goal in mind. And he was like, you know, I was like, "I'm stuck on this thing." I finally was just like, "I'm stuck on this thing." And he was like, "Well, let me help you with it." And I was like, I was just so adamant. No, no, no. Like, I want to figure this problem out myself. I realized at the time that part of that was the problem solving dopamine rush I got, where I wanted to be the one to solve the problem myself so I could feel proud of it. Um, but what ended up happening was I let him help me solve that one problem. And quickly, I'm like, he was able to quickly help me with that because it was actually something that was more in his wheelhouse than mine. And 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 what happened right after that was that we all came together, and all the working parts of this particular project that we were working on came together. It was a really quite groundbreaking tech at the time. Um, and and we had gotten this really difficult thing to work for the first time, that we'd never seen anybody else do before. And we were so excited about it and like high-fiving each other, and had this really immensely exciting moment together where we're just hugging each other and high-fiving because the thing worked, you know. And and it was like, yes, okay, we got real-time 3D mapping, you know, in the browser. And this was like, you know, 15 years ago, right? So this was like really groundbreaking at the time. Now it's not so much. Everybody else went on their phone, but it felt so amazing. But we couldn't have done it without that teamwork, the interdependence. We couldn't have done it without leaving our offices to come into the hallway to have those conversations and say, "I need your help. Can you come into my office and help me? And you know, how can I help you? And are you stuck?" And then I started to implement a rule that was like the 15-minute rule, which was, if you can't figure something out for yourself in 15 minutes, then that's the time to ping somebody else and see if somebody else can help you. And from that point forward, what I found was that things just went so much more smoothly. Everybody was less afraid because they had permission, because there was a rule that said that they couldn't, you know, flounder by themselves alone. And once we did that, when we really focused on, hey, we're a team, and we stopped focusing on, hey, we're individuals with our individual, you know, job descriptions, it's like, no, we're a team all. And yes, we have roles that we typically take, but we all are working towards the same goal, right? We want to get it done. And you know, focusing on being dependent on each other to make that happen, you know, meant that we got some things done that were quite amazing, and I ended up being really, really proud of. But it meant that I had to like let down my own ego and ensure that I was communicating how to do that to the rest of the team by leading by example, right? By not being afraid anymore to step out and ask for help more often, and that sort of thing. Right. Whew. And that comes to this one, which is change over comfort. Man, change is hard sometimes. We get stuck in our comfort zone. And you know, for me, even as a lead, even as an engineering lead, I was a really quiet person. I was not out front. I was very afraid to talk in public. I you know, did not like to give presentations, even though people considered me, you know, an intelligent person with something, uh, you know, important to say sometimes. I was very, very shy. Um, but I had some friends who really encouraged me to get out of my comfort zone and to start sharing some of the knowledge that I had publicly, and to get out there and make a fool of myself sometimes, and to sometimes, you know, really let down my guard. And I appreciated that so much because getting out of my comfort zone meant I got to grow. And that growth led me to do things that I never imagined I would do originally. I never imagined I would like fly all over the world giving presentations at hackathons and conferences, and having an opportunity to talk to hundreds of people at a time sometimes, um, to meet people from all over the place, to have an opportunity to work on new things that I'd never done before. I mean, that was, you know, a significant part of it. But the other part I really want to emphasize when we're talking about change over comfort is allowing that change inside of your team and allowing your team to make changes too. We're not just talking about you. But I touched on some of that earlier in the discussion, when I said you have to let people out of the frame that you put them in. And that's part of, you know, what we're talking about here is getting people to you know, get outside of their own comfort zone and making sure that they understand that there are lots of opportunities to do that, and it's okay if they fail at it a little bit too. That failure is not a bad thing, that there is room for growth only when we are okay with falling down, because learning to, you know, do something we've never done before requires sometimes the ability to face that failure, and to know where our limits are and to grow through them. To say, okay, well, I failed, and get some perspective, like we were talking about before, figure out why, and go at it again. And to do that as a team and to be okay with that, to as a community say it's okay. And we're talking about this, right? You guys are in the middle of a hackathon right now. I'm talking a lot about team and community, something a little bit more long term, but this is a 30-day hackathon, right? You have an opportunity to forge relationships, to get into a work zone with people. I mean, 30 days is like a long time, actually, if you really think about it. It's an opportunity for you to say to somebody else too, hey, is there some part of this that you want to, like, oh, you're done with this part and something else needs to be done. Is there something else you want to try to take up? Because we have some resources available for you to learn, or that sort of thing, because this is all really a learning opportunity, right? Don't keep people stuck where they're at, and don't be stuck yourself. Learn something new while you're here if you have the opportunity to grab onto something that you didn't originally think that you were going to do. Step into one of these. If this is your first hackathon, maybe you start out in your comfort zone and you know, take on a role that's just within your specialty, but maybe the next one you learn something new. And maybe it's something that you don't do forever. You know, I've learned a bunch about marketing, being in developer relations, but it's not, I don't want to go be a CMO somewhere. I don't want to be a chief marketing officer, but I appreciate everything I know about it now. because it feeds into my perspective on things constantly. I've had an opportunity to do business development stuff that, working with the business development team as a solutions engineer. And I've stepped into doing some things that I probably would have never done before, like cold calling and things like that. Do I want to do those things on a regular basis? No, but I'm so grateful for that experience because it gave me an opportunity to see what it's like for the business development people and what their job is like, and appreciate that so much more. I think it makes me a much better leader now that I have the perspective that I have had by stepping into different positions, even if it's only for a short time, and exercising, a different part of me, even if it's not something that I want to do long term. And allowing your team or your community to do some of those things, the experimentation, might allow them to grow even in their primary positions well beyond what you initially imagined. And that gives everybody an opportunity to really step into being their best selves. Because if we're not open to change, there's no possible way we'll ever grow into being our best selves. Distributing power probably has to be the stickiest one amongst people, right? While I didn't necessarily have too much trouble distributing power myself, what I found was sometimes that there were a lot of power dynamics between other people that I ended up having to manage. And as a leader, you're going to bump into those situations quite often, actually, power struggles inside the team. And I guess my biggest advice is learning to communicate through them in a way that respects all of the parties involved. Sometimes you'll find that people really dig their heels in hard when we're talking about power struggles, especially because typically there is a motivator behind it that you need to really dig down to. And I've said this, many times in our talk already, but asking questions is so important because that's how you get to the underlying cause about why somebody might be digging their heels in on a particular power struggle. If you don't understand a person's motivation, then you do not have an opportunity to resolve the conflict. You really need to know where they're coming from. So don't make any assumptions, ask lots of questions. And I would say, even if it feels like you've had, gone around and around, because I know I've felt that way sometimes before I've actually landed on it. Just keep asking questions. And sometimes it means rephrasing the same question in a different way, because, and this is something we all need to remember. I speak English as my primary language. You might not speak English as your primary language, or Spanish, or whatever. And sometimes it takes asking a question in a different way, making a translation, thinking about things through the cultural lens that someone's coming from. These particular situations are made even, there's different layers of depth in them that get a little bit more complicated even when you're talking about global teams, right? Because of those cultural differences, because of the difference in language. And sometimes that requires a level of patience in asking questions and digging down to root causes, in order to get to the, you know, the meat of why somebody might be digging in their heels on a particular power struggle. But that also means, and distributing power also means letting go of power yourself and learning to let go of control. I, you know, when I first stepped into leadership myself, I made the mistake of not distributing power nearly enough amongst my teammates. It meant I like almost had a really bad burnout because I was just feeling totally overwhelmed with the amount of responsibility that I myself was taking on. And I didn't realize how empowering it was for me to give up my power. I want to repeat that because I think it's really important. It was extremely empowering for me to give up my power. And what I mean when I say that is that I all of the sudden started getting things done that I never imagined were possible in times that in a timeline that I never imagined was possible, when I was willing to let go, to let other people step up, to distribute power amongst the people in my team in a way that was way more balanced, so that everybody felt like they had some sort of control over their sphere of influence, of task, of, you know, their little corner of things, and to not micromanage everything anymore. Really distributing power is about that. It's like learning to not micromanage everything. And also it means teaching people to step into their power. Sometimes that means learning to let them go. I've had plenty of those instances where I saw, you know, a teammate go from intern to senior engineer and then move on to another place because there wasn't another management role for them to step into. And that was difficult, but also allowing that to happen in a really graceful way allowed the other teammates on that stayed on my team to see that there was always going to be a path for them to have the power that they needed to change their lives. And I think that's really the thing that's really interesting about this space, is that it being so much more inclusive, having opportunities for people all over the globe. I've seen it like really change the lives of people all over the place, coming from you know, different places, and really, you know, it's been amazing to see, and it's been a fulfilling process, you know, to give some of the power away that, you know, I've had in the education I've been afforded, because of, you know, where I was born, and to, you know, share that with other people, has, like, I don't know, it's made my life so much more fulfilling. And I think that that's what you have to remember, is like distributing power is not giving up anything. It is sharing, and when you do that, people share back in a really meaningful way. I definitely don't think my life would be nearly as fulfilling as it is today if I wasn't willing to distribute some of the power that I was given in my life. Not just with the teams and communities that I work with, but just in general. So so the last thing I wanted to say was, this was a lot, I know. would absolutely love to answer any questions if you have it. I know we're like a little bit over time, but I'm totally willing to hang out and answer some questions since we got it started just a little bit late. And if anybody has anything to say, you can pop into the chat or you know, step up and ask anything you want.
Thank you very much, Angela. Inspiring workshop for sure for everybody who wants to learn something more about leadership. So yeah, I totally agree with all the, you know, the most important parts of the presentation. As Zula says, was an amazing talk. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And thanks,
Yeah.
Zula. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, because leadership is really important, as you have, well, all the workshop has been about leadership. But yeah, that's one thing that we said. I don't remember in the extra space that we have with
Yeah.
you, or this hackathon that we have organized is not only for women to develop and, you know, code, or no, it's to leader also.
Yeah.
Teams is really important. We have to
I think so.
practice. We have to lead projects, and we have to learn how to. If we don't know, we have to learn how, because, you know, nobody. I don't know how to say this in English, but we have to learn. I mean, nobody borns
Yes.
knowing something. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that yeah, I agree with you too, Zula. Like the quality is like really important.
Yeah.
And here's the deal is nope, nobody in the very beginning. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. My first lead position like as a job was actually given to me by a man who saw something and pretty much just demanded that I be in that position. And it was really interesting. I was working for a consultancy at the time, and he said, no, I just want her to be the project manager. I think he saw that I communicated really well. And so I that was my, you know, first opportunity. And then when I lost my job at that consultancy, he offered me a job 2 days later leading a team at another software startup. And, you know, that was the one that really gave me a huge opportunity because it gave me equity for the first time. And, you know, it gave me an opportunity to really change my life. And so I won't say that nobody is going to give you an opportunity, but it definitely meant that I like, he saw that in me first because I was willing to speak up against some of what some of my other team was saying because I felt really passionately about some things. So Ashlyn says, I'm curious how to best establish yourself within the broader Web3 community, social media, etc. Absolutely. So I would say social media, follow people, comment on people who have a lot of followers. That usually gets you a little bit more interaction too. You know, start a conversation with other people who have an existing following. And then the other thing is join other communities, test out lots of other communities. DAOs are so amazing in that way. You know, the whole idea in Web3 is that things are permissionless, meaning you can usually jump into any of these communities without permission. You don't need permission to join. Usually they have some sort of path forward. Okay, I'm not going to say they're all really easy because sometimes the guidance sucks and people are still figuring out how to do DAOs right? So that's sort of difficult sometimes because you'll jump into a community and you'll be like, now what? But don't be afraid to jump into a community, ask questions. I found that mostly the spaces are friendly. Have they all been friendly? No. I mean, there's definitely been some that I was like, okay, this one's not for me. But at the same time, I found that they're more friendly and inclusive here in Web3 than they ever were in Web2 for me. And remember, I spent a lot of years in Web2 before, you know, blockchains existed. I graduated from college in 2002. So just to give you some perspective. So I just, you know, I want to encourage people to not be afraid, not being afraid to step into the spaces. I've also found that, you know, sometimes they can be a little bit brutal about English. But at the same time, I've also found that there are some communities that try extremely hard to overcome those barriers and to be as kind as possible and as patient as possible with some of the language barriers that we found. You know, I you know, had charged ahead with like trying to get all the docs in at unlock written in different languages. I hope that I might be able to make some progress on that this year. But like I really think that that's where everything is going. You know, eventually we'll be in a world where AI translates everything for us very
Yeah.
easily. It's getting so close. But just don't be afraid. And also know that other people who are existing and established in this space are here and helpful. Like you'll find more and more of them as time goes on. But definitely, if you guys have any like individual questions too, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy. I mentor women and non-binary people all the time because I just feel so passionate about bringing other people up in the space with me. You know, I've had so many opportunities given to me, and I feel like, you know, it's sort of my job to to like pass that on to the next generation of people, and then like continue to bring up, you know, diverse the voices and to teach other people to do some of the things that I've had an opportunity to do in my life. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, well, not sure if we have more questions or you want to say something to close the...
Yeah. Find me online. You can follow me at it's Wonder Woman Code everywhere. And you know, like I said, don't be afraid to DM me and ask me silly questions. I didn't have time to like officially mentor for the hackathon, but if you want any you know, any advice or anything else about any of it, just ping me and let me know on one of the socials, and you'll find me, you know, under that one in all the places pretty much. But I appreciate you guys coming today and have fun. Really have fun with this, right? You guys have like a couple more weeks left. You know, have fun. That's what you're here for. You're here to learn and have fun. So do that. It was
Yeah.
nice to meet you guys too.
Yeah, the presentation was really, yeah, great. The colors, yes, everything invites you to learn more about leadership. So, well, if we don't have more questions, we can close this space. And thank you very much, Angela, for
Thanks,
leading
everyone.
this workshop and for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.